What's the most fricked up thing someone has confessed to you in confidence? I guess it's not a confession really, but some guys once told me the most fricked up thing as if it was no big deal. I grew up in the military. When I was in high school we moved across the country to a house that was in a development not far from the base. I made new friends as kids do, and one day I was running around the neighborhood with a few other teens. This was long before the internet. A few of the guys decide they're going to go to this other guy's house and hang out. They ask if I wanna come and the conversation goes like this. Hey, you wanna BJ? What? ABJ? Gary's sister's cute and she'll blow anybody. If she likes you she'll let you frick her too. Yeah, that's his real name, cause frick him. Sure. 15-year-old virgin me is really starting to like it here. We get to Gary's house and knock on the door. Gary answers and invites us in. The other guys mention that I wanna BJ, teasing and giving me a hard time like teen boys do. We walk into the living room and there's Gary's dad on the couch with his pants around his ankles and this little girl giving him a BJ. And Gary tells me she'll take care of me when she's done and gives me this smile like. It still creeps me the frick out thinking about it now almost 30 years later. This girl is young, like very young. I found out later that she was 9. All previous excitement drains out of me as I watch what's unfolding. The grown up on the couch smiles and greets us. The other boys all watching with this look that stuck with me. It took me maybe a minute to make an excuse and get out of there. I went home and just kind of sat there in shock for a while. Eventually a couple of the guys knocked on my door and just wanted to hang out. They asked me if I was okay and basically wanted to make sure I wasn't a snitch. My dad and stepmom came home from work later, both military, and at dinner they could tell something was off. I mean seriously, that was the worst freaking thing I've ever seen in my life. It doesn't take long for me to spill the entire thing to my dad. He calls the cops and I ended up having to talk to the police several times. Gary and his dad got arrested along with 2 other neighborhood kids and a grown-up guy I had never met. I don't know what happened with the girl. I never saw her again. We lived there for 1 school year before moving several miles away to another school district. That year was heck for me. I got heck from the other kids and got the crap beat out of me a couple times for being a rat. That's freaking horrifying. Not just the molestation but that you were the only one to have enough of a conscience to know it was sick and wrong. A friend of mine confessed to me that shortly after we met he shot a man and that the guy later died from complications due to the injuries he inflicted. Worked with a guy who admitted to me that he watched his abusive stepfather die of heart attack and didn't call 911 until he was sure he was dead. Sounds quite well adjusted to me. A few years back a friend of mine, more like a brother, broke down and told me that he had been selling himself on Craigslist to other men. We were both 16 at the time. Never before have I felt as broken and confused as I did in that moment. Back when I was in high school, some kid I knew told me that he fantasized about shooting up the place all of the time and that if he were to act on said fantasies, he would spare me and my girlfriend because he thought we were cool. Never looked at him the same way after that, but at least I knew he would never kill me, I guess. Not so much the story that's effed up, but the total number of people I have had tell me that they were sexually assaulted as a child is very alarming. This right here is the number 1 reason why I'm afraid to have children. Seriously, people suck. Now a bit of backstory. We knew that my grandpa was born in 1922, so he would have been of age for the war, but my grandpa always insisted he never participated and tried to hush up our questions. Skip to him being pretty drunk one night when we went to visit my grandparents. My grandpa told him to go into the other room with him and my parents were already going to bed and everything. I'm in grandpa's room and he pulls out a small chest and opens it, showing me a bunch of photos and old World War II army gear, including his old helmet. I was pretty astonished as he never talked about that time. Out of nowhere he asked for my confidence and I said of course, safe with me. He starts telling me that he landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day as part of the 1st Infantry Division or the Big Red One. He started telling me the things that he saw and I was terrified. Apparently, when he came off the landing craft, the door jammed and only went about halfway down, exposing the soldiers inside without letting them out. Some guys panicked and tried to go over the side, but were shot down. As the crew member was trying to fix the door, Machine guns turned on the exposed landing craft and pretty much wiped out everyone on board. My grandpa went up and over the side with 2 pals of his and successfully made it into the surf without being hit. At this point he started crying and he asked me if I knew what artillery does when it hits, and I said I guess. Him and his friends made it up the beach, miraculously, and onto a small bluff to take cover, but a shell hit about 10 meters away from them. It almost knocked my grandpa out, but when he started to recover from the shock, he realized that both his friends had been hit. He said that one of them was still alive, but had been cut almost in half and was squirming and slowly dying. The other friend, his best friend whom enlisted with my grandpa, had his face blown off and tried to speak, but only made inhuman and awful sounds before he died several minutes later. My grandpa was pinned still trying to recover from the shock and machine gun fire was heavy, so he couldn't go out to comfort or try to help his friends. So he had to sit there and watch them die. My grandpa started to cry uncontrollably and I just hugged him. I was absolutely terrified about what he had been through. I was only 12-13 at the time, but I understood why he didn't tell anyone. When he calmed down a bit, he told me never to tell anyone because that was his burden to bear. He was awfully drunk, but I think he truly meant that, so I haven't told anyone since. This isn't fricked up, it's just sad. He couldn't help any of it. Poor guy. At my 11th birthday party, a girl told me that one of her scout leaders had raped her. Apparently his younger brother had a crush on her and they'd had a falling out. The brother that raped her was 17/18 and she was 10. My birth father told me he wasn't sure I was his after drinking a few too many beers. He said it didn't matter. He loved me anyway, but I'm pretty sure I'm his. We look a lot alike. Mama's baby, daddy's maybe. A friend confessed to me 10+ years ago that someone raped his sister, so he found the guy and killed him. Friend never heard anything about it. Still freaks me out to this day that it was that easy. My old roommate always seemed on good terms with her dad. He came over to help fix things. We'd go to his house for cookouts and stuff, etc. He seemed reasonably normal with some maybe alcoholic tendencies. She confided in me a few months later that he had raped her for years as a child, and still somehow she sees him all the time like he didn't destroy her childhood and leave her traumatized. When I was in 8th grade, my friend confessed to me that her stepdad was molesting her. I told an adult. He was arrested. That he hired a hitman to kill the drunk driver who killed his girlfriend. It cost him £5,000 British. This was in the late 90s. Crap, he was overcharged. When I was 17, one of my best friends confessed to me he was fricking his girlfriend's mother. She had done a thorough job seducing him with gifts. The icing on the cake was they were a church-going Jehovah's Witness family. The more uptight they are, the harder they deviate when they do ha. My cousin told me her father, an OTR driver, picked her and her brother, ages 6 and 3, up to visit him for the weekend in his truck. He was pulled over and given a DUI, arrested and left the kids hidden in the sleeper part of the truck. This happened Friday. He came back for the truck when he got out of jail Monday afternoon. The kids were in the truck the whole weekend. Worked a warehouse job once. A coworker told me that when she was a kid she decapitated a puppy with a shovel. Said she didn't know back then that she needed medication. My former roommate confessed that when he was angry he would buy hamsters to throw them at walls. He also admitted that he never took no for an answer in sex. Pretty sure he was a psychopath. One would think that by the time he got the hamster and got to the wall, the anger would have subsided. This just happened at work the other night. We have a couple of new guys that my lead man and I are going to be training to sandblast on separate shifts until they get their bearings and can go on their own on the 3rd shift we are opening. Now, first I'll tell you, sandblasters work in 2-man crews, in a separate building from the rest of the shops. Anyway, this kid I'm training started with us about 2 months ago, but then after a couple weeks, Disappeared for almost 3 full weeks without any explanation. Rumor had it that he'd been in an accident and was just out on short-term medical. I believed this, because he drives like a freaking moron, and would have been happy believing that forever. He's not all that bright, and pretty much sucks at everything he does, except, it's turning out that he's pretty good at sandblasting from what we've seen so far, so there's hope, but we'll get back to that. So, I got curious on Wednesday night and asked what had happened, and he straight up told me, calm as can be, that his ex-girlfriend was supposed to come see him that weekend. He disappeared so they could reconcile, but her new boyfriend called him and said she didn't want to see him or talk to him anymore. Naturally, he was upset, as one might be, but instead of dealing with this, he proceeds to load a rifle, gets in his car and start driving a state away to go kill both of them. He was talking to his mom about it while it was all going down, and she called the police and they intercepted him about 100 miles into his trip and threw him in a mental hospital for 19 days. He just told me that like he was telling me about what he ate for lunch or something, all while explaining that he still has guns at home that no one knows about. Then, tonight, he leaves work early because he needs to talk to his doctor about the meds he's on because he's having bad thoughts. And they're going to leave me alone with this whack job for 2 weeks, overnight, operating very dangerous equipment. Sweet. Wait, you never got back to the part where he has potential with sandblasting. This might sound stupid after the comments posted by the others about sexual abuse etc. Anyways, my roommate after a couple of drinks confessed that he was wearing my underwear because he was too lazy to look for his. That she had sex with someone 37 years older than her whose kids she babysat when she was in high school. She's a great person, just a little nympho. My best friend in HS babysat for her karate instructor and apparently they also hummed like bunnies. But her mom, though I was a bad influence on her, was getting drunk with a Romanian exchange student once, and he told me that he honestly wished Hitler had wiped out the gypsies. My first real boyfriend was associated with a gang and confessed to me shot someone when he was 15 years old. He said he didn't know if he died or not, and that they used him because he was under 16. It was in a different country and nothing ever came of it, but he was really fricked up about it. Edit. NSFL. Involves a brutal cat murder. An ex-friend once told me about how she and a few of our mutual friends got really fricked up on pills one night. Went to the local elementary school playground and started tormenting a cat that was there, kicking it, poking it, etc. They eventually tied it by its neck to the empty tetherball chain and played tetherball with it, hitting it back and forth until its neck snapped and finally died. I could go into more detail, but I don't think it's really necessary. The worst part of all, they left the cat hanging there for the children to find in the morning. All the school kids live houses right behind the school, so there's a huge chance that was probably one of their cats. I got shivers retelling that. Never really looked at that group of people the same, and I have long distanced myself from them, for good reason. That he killed someone. He was a friend of mine that had taken some bad choices in life and was at that time living on the street, having a rage addiction and a girlfriend with the same problematic lifestyle. She supported them by prostituting herself. However, there was some guy who liked her and tried to rape her. My friend got mad and deliberately gave him a bad fix. He told me he knew that the guy would die from that injection, and he was watching the whole time until he died. He said it was one of the most incredible, mixed feeling situations he have ever experienced. I'm in the same class with these twins. They're originally from Argentina but they're studying here in Canada. One time someone asked them if they were planning on becoming Canadian citizens after they graduated. Instantly, the girl says number. Here in Canada incest between siblings is against the law. Her brother just nodded along and added a yup at the end. They told us that they first started when they were 10. Their parents know about it and disapprove, but they can't really do anything about it because it's not illegal, and they even kissed to prove they weren't joking. They were completely nonchalant about it too, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The brother once showed us a picture of his pee after a brutal boxing match. It looked like coke mixed with pee. He said he wanted to drink some of it to see what his kidney remnants tasted like. And worst of all, he admitted that he has a seed box but he doesn't seed his torrents. Deleted. I used to be in a close friend circle of 4 which comprised of a couple and 2 other girls including myself. The other girl told me that she and the boyfriend of the couple are having an affair. I don't know what she expected out of telling me that. There's a lot of relief that comes with just admitting something like that to a person, I guess. A coworker, we'll call her Anne, told me a story about her softball coach when she was in high school. Her dad was abusive and her mom took her and ran when she was young, so her father was not in the picture. Her softball coach had become a kind of father figure to her and she spent a lot of time with him. One of the girls on the team disappeared and her parents assumed she had run away with her boyfriend since she was a troubled girl and the boyfriend was bad news. One day Anne rode to practice with her coach and when they were finished with practice, she grabbed his keys and was going to put her bag in his trunk because she was embarrassed about smelly clothes in her bag. When she opened his trunk she found the dead naked body of her teammate in his trunk. She didn't say anything and quit softball and took up drugs and fighting a lot. The coach eventually got caught and went to jail. She was mostly off drugs by the time I met her, but she was definitely not functional. She was still drinking and fighting a lot. It was sad. Was dating a single mom and she got a bit drunk one night and told me she wished she never had kids because she hates being tied down to them. My aunt once told me this with her kids in the room. Sadly, I don't think it was the first time she'd expressed that sentiment in front of them. Gave sister my USB stick with a Game of Thrones episode on it. Came back with a folder full of pictures of her bare butt. Confronted her. She confessed she wanted me to see but didn't think I'd say anything about it. Then she asked me what I thought of it. Yep. What do you do when it's your last day with the class together for 3 years and you have to confess about what you feel about every individual classmate? When it was this one girl's turn, my friend here stood up and just said, yeah, I had sexual fantasies about you and I'd totally frick you if you let me to. Needless to say, we all stared at him and he just said, what? At least I'm being honest. And I needed to say something about her, right? He might have been able to score that if he worded that completely differently. My ex told me he used to get high with his mom in high school and they'd sleep naked together. Fooled around a little bit. Didn't go all the way but still. He didn't see it as a big deal. Her husband, his father, had died and he saw it as comforting each other. I could never look at either of them same way. I went to a preppy boarding school in high school. During that time I made good friends with a guy who lived across the hall from me who I'll call B. B was a year ahead of me in school, and he was an entertaining, if a bit odd, dude. One of my favorite memories is walking over to his room and having a long philosophical discussion with him while a hardcore P video played in the background. Fast forward to the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. I used to talk to B over AIM regularly, and I really felt bad for the guy because he was having a lot of trouble fitting in at college and had dropped out and was living back at home. That summer, though, things turned from strange depressed to erratic. I would get random non sequitur messages from him in the middle of the night. There were 3 or 4 of us who were good friends with him, and there would be periods when none of us would hear from him. I didn't get a lot of the details until later as to some of the crazy stuff he did while he was missing. So from my view, as someone who only talked to him online from 2,000 miles away, I didn't really know what to make of it. Then there was the last time I talked to him. He messaged me over AIM and told me he had to confess to me. He explained that he had bad and strange thoughts. He said he had memories of adults at our high school attacking him, but he wasn't sure if they were real or if someone had planted them in his head. I remember being really worried and pleaded for him to get help. I didn't know what else to do, and eventually he signed off. The next day, I got a call from one of our mutual friends, sobbing. B had gotten into an argument with his dad that morning, took his dad's gun, shot him, and then turned the gun on himself. Luckily his father survived, but B didn't. Hearing that it had happened, just a day after he had told me what things were going through his head, was really tough as an 18-year-old. It was easily one of the worst days of my life. I wish that we could have helped you, B. Maybe if I had been a bit older then, I would have had a better idea of how to save you from yourself. I also regret not making it to your funeral. I just want you to know that I think about you often, bud. One time, Once things had died down at the end of a party, I was having a conversation with one of the few other guys not passed out. I had spoken with him a few times previously, but I wouldn't have said we were anything close to being friends. We got to talking about crappy ex-girlfriends, and I mentioned the most recent girl I had broken up with. I told him about how, towards the end of the relationship, she had started lying to me about where she was going, who she was with, etc. We had gotten into a few fights about this and eventually we broke up over it. I never really got to the bottom of what she was really doing during those times she lied about, though. Once I finished my story, the guy said, "Oh, do you mean her name? Yay. She kept showing up to my frat house to have sex with me and my brothers. Fricked up, but it carried a certain bit of closure that I made the right choice to end that relationship when I did." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.